A while back, I saw my dad watching The Breakfast Club on the TV. I have not used the TV since COVID to watch Breaking Bad, so. Um, and BoJack Horseman. BoJack Horseman, by the way, is the best TV show ever made. I will die on that hill. Anyway, I saw my dad watching The Breakfast Club. And I watched like a few, maybe 30 seconds of it before I walked out. Because my first thought was, why the hell would anyone make a movie about teenagers in high school? Maybe that's a weird thing to say, but I never really understood why people would be interested in watching a bunch of kids in a school just doing whatever shit kids do in school. I don't know. I was not all of that interesting in school. I don't think anybody is. But besides that, I thought it was kind of strange. And recently I've learned that there are more movies like this. There are more movies about people within different generations just do whatever they did that was popular at that time. And I thought about it, and I still think it's weird that, you know, there are movies about people just living their lives, because if, you know, I feel like you why would you pay money to just watch somebody live? It's kind of like watching Twitch streamers, you know. Like, why would somebody watch a Twitch streamer just doing whatever it is that they do throughout the day, you know? But besides all that, the whole slice of life, or whatever genre that kind of movie is, like the Dazed and Confused or the Superbads or whatever, and I kind of came to the realization that we Gen Z don't have anything like that, as far as I know. I've never heard of a TV show or a movie that kind of just reflects Gen Z life. And admittedly, I can't really blame them, because I feel like a lot of what we do is kind of just sitting around and just waiting for the world to end at this point. But maybe that's just me, you know. But yeah, we don't really have anything like that. I've never heard of a, I guess what would be the equivalent of a Dazed and Confused or a Superbad, or even like a Breakfast Club or whatever. You know, like, that whole thing kind of just seems kind of strange to me. Because one, why would someone make a movie out of that? Two, what's the appeal of it? And three, how do you even go about writing something like that? Like, I feel like, well, firstly, I should say I never watched any of these movies. Like, I think I vaguely remember watching Superbad, but I haven't seen the other two. But I know enough about them to tell you, strange person on the internet, that I don't really believe that any of those things happened in real life. Again, maybe I'm wrong. I was born in 2004, and my parents are Indian, so we don't really do anything like that, you know, all the white people bullshit. But I still find it kind of strange that these things happened, you know? I still find it strange that I've never heard of anything like that for my generation. Now, it's not to say that like parties didn't really happen for my generation, because I remember like kids in my school doing that, but it was like the rich kids. That's how I always looked at it. Like all those kind of movies are just stuff that the rich kids did. Maybe that's why I don't watch these movies, because to me it's like all rich people stuff, or white people stuff, or rich white people stuff. Like they go out and do that stuff. We don't. Like cultural differences and whatnot. But even so, like I would think that somebody would have made a movie about that, right? But I've never heard of it. No movies, no TV shows. I have heard people trying to and just failing miserably. So maybe that's something. But no, I've never heard of it before. I'm not really sure like why that whole genre. I don't know what you call the genre. Like, is the Breakfast Club the same as Dazed and Confused, or is it, in the sense as, is it the same genre, or is it two different things? Because I don't know. I have no plans to watch either of these movies. So maybe one of you could explain, because for some reason all my audience is just like old people, middle age, 50s, 60s. I don't know how that happened, but that seems to have been that is the case. I need to get my audience to be my age, so there. But yeah, maybe one of you could tell me how, if those two things correlate the same genre, and what that genre is, because I don't know. I don't really know what that genre is, or if there's even a name for it, or if it's just like one of those things, like a one-off kind of thing. But I don't think anybody's gonna do it at this point, right? Like next year, the first of my generation will turn 30. Now I don't know when the obsession over certain generations ends. My thinking was always that it usually ended when they started having kids, but I doubt any of us are going to. I'm not going to have kids. I refuse to have any children whatsoever. And I think that's going to be the case for most people my age, though I'm probably just not going to get involved in any of that. But from my understanding is that usually the age of when you start to have kids, which is like in your 30s, is usually when that generation is moved on from and the next generation comes in. So like when the millennials started having kids, people kind of moved on from them because they had their own responsibilities to deal with. And my generation is going to start having kids, which means we'll be moved on from. The Gen Alphas will come in and do their thing. So that's something that I realized, is that the Gen Xers and the millennials have their like movies, that thing where they have like something to connect to, but we don't have anything like that. I've never heard of a movie like that was kind of like our thing, right? Like again, yeah, like Dazed and Confused or Superbad, which connects to Gen X and millennials. I don't know if the boomers have their own thing, because I never heard of any boomer party movies either, so I couldn't speak to that. But yeah, we don't have our own movie either. If that's the case, if the boomers don't have their own movie. See, that was kind of interesting to me. Maybe a little strange. it may be a little annoying that we don't have anything of our own to like say it's ours, right? I mean, we have superhero movies, I guess. We have the whole Marvel thing, I think. I don't know. I wasn't into Marvel until a few years ago. I never really was into superhero movies until recently. So, but I guess like Marvel movies is it's like the closest we have to our thing. And if not, then I don't know. 'Cause if it's not Marvel movies, because I remember when I was a kid, like all the kids in school were like really into Marvel. You know, like they were all talking about it. I remember the whole hype thing with Infinity War. I never watched it. I didn't watch any Marvel movies until like 2023, with like a few exceptions here and there, but wasn't like very interested at all. But I remember the hype around it, and all the kids my age were like really into it, so I kind of associated that with my generation. Because like beyond that, like we don't really have anything that's like ours, right? We don't have anything that really connects us to this generation. We have no media when it comes to like TV or movies that's like our thing. Because all the older people, which are running the company, still think the millennials are still young, even though they're not. All my cousins are millennials in their 40s. They all have grown families. So, yeah, I mean, there's not really what you call any sort of a connection there for us specifically. The older generation doesn't really seem to understand how Gen Z works. I think that's like the problem here. Because again, going back to Superbad, like the guy that directed it, Jordan or whatever the fuck, like he was part of that generation. I'm assuming whoever did Dazed and Confused is a part of his generation, but none of us in Gen Z until now with Obsession and Backrooms really had our own movies or thing. Like this is the first time I'm ever hearing of someone my age directing and writing a movie that's directly meant to appeal to us, which might sound strange until again you realize that this is the first time that I think any of us are actually getting any sort of media representation beyond just acting or music, which is again like it's a whole thing. But it's the first time I'm ever hearing of a Gen Z director or a Gen Z writer. Like this is a new thing for us. It's happening really late. Like we're about to fuck off into the void. So yeah. I don't really know if there's somebody's mowing the lawn right now. I don't really know if or what that really means for us, that we're not gonna really have that much media representation, because it feels like the last two generations got a lot of representation and we're kind of just been forgotten about, just underrepresented in media. And by the time we get into media, we'll already be gone, and the next generation will be coming in and doing their thing, taking over. So that's something I was thinking about now as I'm speaking, because I didn't write any of this down. So yeah, there's all that. I'm trying to think of more things to say. Again, that's the problem with not writing any scripts, is that you tend to not have to come up with stuff on the fly. Um, have you ever watched Back to the Future? I watched Back to the Future. I hated Back to the Future. Those are some of the worst movies I've ever seen. But that being said, I remember the first Back to the Future movie was kind of like nostalgia for the 50s. And I'm kind of wondering if that was kind of like, because again, if the boomers didn't have their own sort of representation in the media, if Back to the Future is kind of like them making up for it, making up for how they didn't get like any representation in media. Because all the 60s movies I've watched were the Clint Eastwood movies, the westerns. I have not seen any other movie from the 60s. Not none, but like not like many. The ones I remember, like The Hustler, weren't really about boomers. They're about like, other stuff, westerns and gambling and all that stuff. So I'm wondering if Back to the Future is kind of like a retroactive representation of the 50s. Because if it was, then maybe what we'll do is we'll have our own time machine movies like Back to the Future, where we'll kind of like retroactively have Gen Z representation in movies, which would suck because I really hate those kinds of movies, nostalgia movies and movies about time. I really hate that stuff. No, it's very lazy and doesn't really do anything for anyone by the time you finish the movie. So yeah, I don't know. At this point, I'm just guessing and making stuff up. I don't even know if anybody's made it to this point. You should comment if you made it to this point, because I kind of want to know if anybody actually cares enough about these videos or is interested enough by these videos to make it to the end. If I'm even at the end. I probably should end it now, so yeah. See ya.